Yeah, it's better. Yeah. Okay. Please operate this. Hi. So let's get into the geekier stuff about cryptocurrencies, tokens, and ICOs. So if there's anything that you want to know about Bitcoin, about Ethereum, about protocols, and how cryptocurrencies work, what is proof of work, what is cryptography, and what was the magic ingredient of Bitcoin, and so on, I can explain that. So I have a presentation here for the origin of cryptocurrencies, ICOs, and tokens, and explaining the evolution until the current state of market. And if you're interested, I also have a technical presentation on the current technological challenges in the distributed ledger technology. So depending on your interest, we will focus on whatever topics that matter to you. So let's start with the cryptocurrencies presentation. So that's my background. Um, I did my engineering from Indian Institute of Technology, and then I majored in finance from Wharton School of Business. And I currently represent Ethereum Foundation in India. I was the first one to bring Vitalik Buterin into India. We've done a few conferences, and we are trying to build the Ethereum developers community in India. We recently hosted a full blockchain week, which Vitalik presided. We hosted a hackathon at the Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay, and we were very pleased to see that the developers had progressed a lot since last year. Last year, people were only talking about Bitcoin and Bitcoin kind of exchanges. There were no functionalities and features which were beyond that. But now people were coming up with smart contract functionalities in their applications. So I also advise the Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh. As you know, that governments play a very important role in the adoption of blockchain because it is mostly to do with regulation, and it is, since it is all pervasive, you need the approval of a government to take it on board, like you see currently happening in Russia. So Putin is very on board with the potential of blockchain, and he is making friends with Vitalik. So the government plays a very big role. So Andhra Pradesh government is similar to the Dubai government, and they are pioneers of technology. So they have taken a lot of initiatives to bring the global fintech and blockchain talent to FinTech Valley. We call it FinTech Valley, which is Vishakhapatnam or Vizag port, which is close to our new capital. And I'm experienced in capital markets and leverage finance, and I've had previous stints in investment banks with Credit Suisse and UBS. So that's Vitalik and us presenting in India. We did the first blockchain summit in 2016, and we did once again the Ethereum India Summit in 2017. So what are initial coin offerings? So we have global technology savvy investors. So the difference, the distinguishing factor between venture capital and ICOs. We also had tech savvy investors like before. We had Andreessen Horowitz, we had Benchmark Capital, Sequoia Capital, and all these very renowned VC investors who are popular names in Silicon Valley. So they were the first ones to actually see any inventions coming to the market. But the difference between ICOs and the traditional venture capital is that a group of technologists now get together. They need not even have a legal entity registered, but they get together and they want to work on a project, and they create a white paper. And in that white paper, they list their invention, and they give the technical details of what that invention is going to do and what the business model is going to be like. So if you want to put a gist of what an initial coin offering is, it is very simply elements of crowdfunding combined with exponential technology growth. So it's operating at the real frontier of technology innovation. And for those of you who are deep into blockchain, you know that blockchain is really at the frontier of mathematics, of game theory, of economics. and cryptography and so on. So you combine these two, the very forefront of technology and a crowdfunding platform, which is targeted at the pioneers of crypto, basically the very beginners of Bitcoin who invested in Bitcoin in 2010, 11, 12. They are all millionaires, as David was explaining, one pizza equals $20 million. So they really want this ecosystem to thrive. So they are throwing money at all the other inventors. So that's very simply the ICO, which is what is leading to the real hype. The second distinction between the traditional investing and the ICO. So this is traditional investing. So if you look at the similarities, there is an operating organization here, there is an operating organization here. And you have the founders here, outside investors here, outside investors here. The difference is, earlier in the traditional equity model, the operating company used to give out stake to the investors at this level. So investors held an equity or held a stake in the operating company. So if the company fails, of course, the investors don't get anything for the return. But if the company succeeds, they get a huge multiple, because typically their screening factors included what is the potential size of the market, and typically VCs only invested in companies which were going after billions and trillions of dollars of market. So if your business was targeting something like $5 million or something, that would not interest VCs. Then you would have to go to your family and friends to get the funding. VCs were only interested in funding a company that was targeting a market size of at least billions in dollars. So here they held equity stake, but here in the ICO model, they have nothing to do with the operating company. So only the founders have a relation with the operating company. The investors are completely screened from the operating company, but the operating company issues tokens or coins, and the outside investors put money in return for the coins. So this is the product layer, which is produced by the operating company. In most cases, this product layer consists of a technological platform. For example, this would be the company which is producing Ethereum, and this would be Ethereum. Okay, so the investors, by investors I mean the initial coin subscribers, would have access to using the Ethereum technological platform, and they would give money either in the form of crypto, which is Bitcoin, Ether, or even fiat in some cases, and they would get back tokens. So for example, in Ethereum's case, they would get back Ether in return. They have no relationship with the operating company. They have no equity stake, and if the company goes bust or if the company succeeds, they do not have a proportional stake which they benefit or lose from. So all they benefit or lose from is from their holding of the coins. So that's the primary difference between the traditional equity investing and ICOs. And another factor which is fueling this rapid rise in the ICO market is liquidity. So here, if investors invested in an operating company and it's a startup, typically it's very private and there is no way for investors to trade in the equity of a private company. So you have to actually find some other buyer who would be willing to take your share in the company for a price. That means you have to find a buyer who believes in your company, and you have to agree at a price point where they would take it, which is all very difficult because it's a private market and you have to find believers in the potential of your company and so on. Here, the moment you have listed your initial coin offering on a crypto exchange, it is liquid. So mostly in a matter of days, you start to exchange the crypto tokens. And because demand far outweighs supply, as we have seen so far in the initial coin offerings ecosystem, they all tend to rise rapidly, because right now there is no way for most people to distinguish which of the initial coin offerings will succeed in the long term. Everyone is going after the token issuances because of huge demand far outstripping supply. And therefore, because of this demand exceeding supply and because of this huge liquidity which is facilitated by the exchanges, anyone who wants to subscribe to the ICOs can get out even tomorrow, and mostly at a price which is higher than at which you got in. So there is no loss here for the ICO subscriber. So these are the two things that are fueling the high rise in the ICO market. Okay, so let's look at a demand supply curve. Okay, so usually for any product in the market, if you have studied microeconomics, this is how a demand supply curve looks like. So if you are willing to be offered a higher price, a supplier or a producer of goods is always willing to supply more goods because he is getting higher price. And the demand, if you're sold a good at a higher price, you're willing to buy less of the good because of diminishing marginal utility. So the demand supply curve always looks like this. And here is the clearing price or the equilibrium price. But because of the current nascent stage of the cryptocurrencies and tokens, the demand is far higher than the market clearing price or the equilibrium price. So there is an artificial setting of a price, okay, which is here, which is far lower than the equilibrium price, because a lot of people want to get into the crypto economy, but they are unable to get into the crypto economy. And some instances like Bash, for example, we have seen that the ICO launch has completed in 30 seconds and they've raised $30 million. That means only the very big whales who put in the orders before, who are very quick to the mouse, were able to get in, and a lot of others were prevented from even participating in the ICO launch. So if you put, the only way to prevent this from happening is to make the price very high. So let's say the initial token is offered at 1 token equals, 1 ether equals 1,000 tokens. Then a lot of people are willing to buy it. Then you make 1 token equals 1 ether, probably there'll be less people who are interested. But because this price is arbitrarily fixed at the beginning, the demand far outstrips. So here is where the ICO is fixing its price. So the market clearing price is here. So that is why what we are seeing is, as soon as the ICO launch is finished, people are buying it up and the price is rapidly increasing. Okay, so here is a list of all the ICOs that you have seen. This slide is a bit dated. It was 1.2 billion about a month or two ago. Currently, it is nearly $2 billion that have been raised in ICOs, and over 50 issues. So you see, the maximum amount was raised by these ICOs. Tezos was one, EOS was one, Bancor was one. So these were all close to $150 to $200 million each. And then we have the others, which are not far behind: 10x, Status, MobileGo, Sonam, Basic Attention Token, Civic, Storage, Polybius, and so on. And even these amounts were only at the time when the ICOs were launched. So at the ether price that was prevalent on the date of announcement of their ICO. So currently, if you see the ether price appreciation from that point till now, it could be far higher. So some of the ICOs that raised, $5 million or $2 million about 2 years ago, they're sitting on reserves of more than $200 million, because that's been the price appreciation of a lot of cryptocurrencies, mainly Ether and Bitcoin, which were the currency in which these ICOs collected money. So even these guys, which you see were small fundraisers, are sitting on hundreds of millions of dollars of cryptos. Okay. So one of the factors, as you saw, is the market volatility and mostly belief in the upside potential of the cryptos, which is seeing very large capital gains for early adopters. So not just the ICOs are gaining, because the Ether and Bitcoin themselves are dynamic and their prices are increasing. But even the early adopters, so people who are buying these tokens, are benefiting from quick appreciation of the prices of crypto, including these tokens, regardless of which industry these tokens are playing in. So you see here the market cap. This is again a bit dated. This is as of June. And the entire crypto economy is somewhere around $120 billion, out of which Bitcoin was 43, Ethereum was very close at 35, Ripple at 10 billion, Litecoin 2 billion, Ethereum Classic 2 billion. So as you can see, this is before the split of Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. So you will find that even Bitcoin Cash makes its way to this diagram as one of the most prominent cryptocurrencies. So the price movement catalyst. So what is driving the price? One is the growing mainstream awareness. So people who have nothing to do with crypto, people who have no understanding of blockchain technology or cryptography are getting interested because they're seeing that if you held Bitcoin last year, today suddenly you're 4 times richer. So you don't care what you're holding, whether it's gold or diamonds or a pink rock from the beaches of Dubai, you just want to own it. So that's the growing awareness of mainstream. And then you have technical improvements in underlying protocols. So for those who are more technically savvy and those who understand the blockchain protocol and those who understand all the inventions that are coming into the marketplace, they know now that the blockchain technology is now at a mature level, which can closely compete with the current existing prevalent technologies in terms of privacy, in terms of security, and in terms of throughput. So these are the 3 major concerns that blockchain technology suffered from earlier. But even here, we are coming up with more updated protocols where one feels confident that with the blockchain technology, you can actually substitute the current technologies in any system, like whether it is financial services, whether it is in any other industry like payments and so on. So that is giving people more confidence. And as these people are more confident, now they will start building applications that are more mainstream in nature rather than very niche. And as they build more mainstream applications, then the industry, the whole economy will get to know and the adoption also increases. And then the other factor was a very massive joining of the Ethereum Enterprise Alliance by the world's biggest corporates. So Microsoft was one of the leading members of the EEA, and along with Microsoft, there's over 200 members, which are all corporate biggies, like Santander Bank, like TCS, Wipro, Cognizant, and so on. These are all joining the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, and this started happening in the beginning of this year. So in fact, when we hosted the Blockchain India Summit in December, one of the journalists asked me, what do you think are the factors for blockchain to go mainstream? And I said, interoperability is a major factor because blockchain is meant for interaction between 2 systems or 2 ledgers or 2 companies. And therefore, you need to have uniform interoperable standards for blockchain to become mainstream. And then Consensus, which was present at the conference, took the idea away, and they played a major role in bringing together this alliance. And they have also got together a lot of corporate biggies now. So once around 100 people, 200, not people, 100 or 200 entities joined the Ethereum Enterprise Alliance, it gave major confidence to the world players, saying, okay, this is a technology that we can all put our collective faith in. And together, we can start building applications which are mainstream and which can replace the existing technologies available. Global wealth looking for new asset classes and diversification. So if you take Mark Cuban or some of the richest guys who were even sitting on the sidelines and who were skeptical about Bitcoin and so on, they have now waited on the sidelines for a few years, 5 years, 10 years, and now they're frustrated with it because they see that they are getting left behind. A new wealth class is being created. It's like the new oil. So when oil was discovered or when gold was discovered, if you sat risk averse and if you're sitting on the sidelines not doing anything, you will see all your peers getting very rich. And it's a peer pressure because you also want to play in the new economy. Otherwise, your wealth stays constant, and then there is a new form of wealth which is growing, and your relevance reduces in the new economy. That exactly explains why Putin is taking interest in blockchain, because Putin is perhaps one of the richest men in the world, and nobody likes their dominance or their leading position being diluted by new technologies, new players, and new billionaires and new trillionaires being created by this new paradigm. And creation of new exchanges and listings of new tokens. So suddenly in 2017, after all these things happened, we saw tremendous success of a few ICOs, and this encouraged the other idle innovators to come forward and create their own tokens. And now there are suddenly dozens of tokens being launched every week. And in fact, in 1 month, which is I think June or July, more than 500 or 600 million dollars were raised. So the entire $2 billion of ICOs, which have been raised over just 2017 so far, not even the full year, the 500 or 600 million were raised just in 1 month. And this was contributed by one of the big ICOs that I mentioned to you earlier, which was Bancor, EOS, and Tezos. And we can explain later what made these ICOs really super successful. So these are some of the possible sources of big guys chasing the crypto economy and fueling its rapid growth. So you have here mining pools. So this is a bit technical. So if you know how the Bitcoin ecosystem operates, now Bitcoin ecosystem is almost similar to the banking hegemonies and the banking monopolies, where a few miners have got together. These are miners who possibly control 20% of the hash rate or 30% of the hash rate and so on. So currently there are about 10 pools or even less that control more than 50 to 60% of Bitcoin hash power. And these are the names of those Bitcoin miners. And they're very powerful. And we have seen a lot of politics recently when people were deciding whether the Bitcoin protocol has to be forked and what sort of developments do we have to pick and so on. So just for simple decision making like SegWit and the Bitcoin block size, whether to increase it from 1 MB, 2 MB, there was a lot of politics. It took enormous time and it took enormous controversies, and the whole topic was very sensational. So these guys were responsible for all that because they had big stakes that they needed to protect. And then you had exchanges. So Poloniex, for example, is an exchange in the United States. And you have Bitfinex, Bittrex, and a lot of other over-the-counter exchanges. So exchanges are very important because you can create a cryptocurrency and it doesn't take more than copying 20 lines of code from Ethereum, which is already open source. So anyone can create a cryptocurrency in less than 5 minutes. But what is more important is to make it a real fungible cryptocurrency. I mean, do people adopt it? Is there value to the cryptocurrency? Can you list it on an exchange? Can someone trade it for something of real value like fiat or something? And for that, you need to list it on an exchange. And that's why exchanges have occupied a significant position in the crypto economy. And then you have funds and traders of currencies. So because crypto economy is now proving to be very prominent, these early pioneers started investing in Bitcoin, say 4 to 5 years ago, and now they invest very aggressively in all sorts of cryptocurrencies and tokens. So in fact, they're so aggressive. I've never been quoted by the VCs and so on. So, but the early ICO investors are chasing the ICO founders, saying we want to invest and can we have your materials? It was never the case earlier for any entrepreneur who was trying to raise money. Entrepreneur had to go and knock on thousands of doors and had to have a thick skin to withstand so many rejections. And then he got the money. Now it's a completely different scenario. So the names there are Polychain Capital, Grayscale, Rich Fund, Falcon, and so on. And And some of these funds were set up by the early blockchainers who managed to get a lot of money from the existing institutions. Like, for example, Digital Asset Holdings was one, which managed to raise $60 million at the time, which was huge. And probably they did not have a business plan to justify that kind of fundraising. So they started investing in other blockchain applications that they felt were promising. So these kind of people then set up funds and they are aggressively, actively looking for investments. And then you have pure initial coins and token investors, which is a more recent phenomena. These are Pantera, Blockchain Capital, Digital Currency Group, Polychain Capital, and so on. And these guys, again, are opportunists which have arisen out of the recent trends in the ICOs. And then you have traditional financial investors. Now, the VCs have reason to be very concerned about what's happening. Because if $2 billion have been raised just for blockchain companies and just through these ICOs, then imagine what happens if tomorrow another industry starts taking the ICO route for fundraising. Then the VCs have no role to play because one, the founders do not have to part with any equity at all. They don't have to give you any shares. And that means they don't have to be controlled by any boards and any investors. So they have complete autonomy to do what they like. They do not have to give any equity and they get the benefit of all the liquidity and the money. So you can't have it better than this in any time of the past history. As far as the entrepreneurs are concerned. So seeing this, the traditional investors at VCs are feeling completely left out and they're feeling that they have missed the boat. So they are trying to get into the game of ICO investing. Okay, so a lot of people would say that ICO is a bubble similar to the dot-com bubble. So there might be some element of truth in this. And the element of truth is when the dot-com arrived, people saw tremendous potential in it because it was revolutionary, it was disruptive, and it was game-changing. So similarly, ICOs are game-changing, they're revolutionary, and they have a lot of potential. So, but the one fact we need to take away is that a lot of dot-com companies did not survive after a decade or so. So there were hundreds of companies that raised a lot of hundreds of millions of dollars and so on. There was dot-com bubble, all the funds. I remember investing in the 1990s thinking, you cannot go wrong and so on. But after a decade, most of those companies did not survive because they did not have the skills to execute. Technology can only take you so far, but the rest depends on your ability to execute. So you can have a great idea in a blockchain, but you need to execute, you need to scale, you need to attract capital. All sorts of factors need to come together. So there is no magic recipe. Magic recipe, you might get $200 million funding, but can you guarantee me that the 3 ICOs that raised $150 and $200 million funding will be there 10 years later? We cannot be sure. So the money you raise is no indicator of how successful you will be. And this is a fact of life anywhere else. So the one truth that you can take away from the dot-com bubble is even though a lot of companies did not survive later, the winners actually are going to be the winners for the entire industry. They're going to usurp the current positions of incumbents and they're going to be bigger than the winners of the current industry or the current status quo. So you're going to find a new breed of winners, and those companies are going to come from these new players which are playing in this disruptive field. So some of these ICOs, maybe they are not existent yet, but some of these ICOs which are all starting up now will become the future successes which will replace the current leaders in every field. So probably they will replace the banking leaders, probably they'll replace all sorts of leaders. They'll probably replace the Amazons, they'll probably replace the Googles, they'll probably replace the Facebooks and Twitters and so on. But these are the winners. These are not everybody. And everybody else, some of them will fall apart. And that's the law of nature as far as any industry is concerned, not just for blockchain. Okay. This is a bit premature because we can talk about the regulatory later. So there's a lot of regulatory uncertainty about ICOs, and different jurisdictions have taken different views. So what is important for initial coin offerings is to study each regulation carefully and study your business model and your product and see whether it falls into a security category or whether it is a utility category, whether it is a currency, whether it is a commodity, asset, or an instrument. Because now we're talking about blockchain taking over the whole world. An ICO or a token or a coin can be any of these things. It can be a currency, it can be a utility, it can be a commodity, or it can be even a security, like a stock. And different jurisdictions treat it differently. So depending on where you want to play, you want to make sure what category your coin or token falls under, and you want to select the appropriate jurisdiction to stay safe. Okay, so here is a quick snapshot of each jurisdiction. So Switzerland, for example, treats a token as an asset and not a security. So therefore, it is safe for a lot of token creators which are creating something similar to a security to go to Switzerland. China. So China has just banned all ICOs. So by the way, we are all heading to all the speakers you're going to see today. We are all heading to an Asia tour. We're very excited about it. We're going to Singapore, Hong Kong, Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, and so on. And we had a lot of conferences. We all signed up to those conferences in Beijing and Shanghai, and some of them have been told to pull off either because of the security reasons that Kim Jong will bomb us when we are there, or because ICOs are illegal. So the threats are manifold. So we don't know which risk it is. But some of the conferences are cancelled. So China is a big uncertain element. But having said that, 95% of trading of all Bitcoins came from China historically. 95% of investing in all ICOs came from China. 95% of volumes of the exchange trading came from China. So China is a behemoth that we cannot ignore in the crypto economy because they were the pioneers who took on Bitcoin, who embraced Bitcoin, who set up mining farms, and they took advantage of the cheap electricity power there in China, set up mining farms, and they aggregated a lot of Bitcoins. A lot of the mining pools that I indicated to you earlier, they also happen to belong to China. So China is a tiger that no one can ignore if you want to take the crypto economy seriously. So United States China is friendly in comparison to United States. United States is something you want to avoid. It's like the psychopath, even if the psychopath is saying, oh, yeah, I'm really interested in you, I'll be friendly, I'll be safe, we say, no, please, no contact, no interaction with you. So that's sort of the standing of crypto folks as far as the United States is concerned, because the United States is very protectionist and they do not want to allow any disruptions to their current status quo. We also suspect they are in partnership with the current incumbents, and current incumbents have a lot to lose if crypto economy becomes so prominent as to pose a prominent threat to their existence. And the regulators, we suspect, are not actually friendly to the people, but to the incumbents. That's the only reason why a government or a regulator would view inventions suspiciously and would not want them to thrive and would want to throttle them. So that is the case with the United States. And in the United States, you have the fear, you're always quoting the dread of your crypto being considered as security. So I believe Kraken Exchange, which is also based in the United States, stopped trading in a lot of cryptos recently for the very reason that those cryptos might be considered securities by US, and then they would have been trading this illegally and they would be on the wrong side of the law. So here is Singapore, another friendly jurisdiction where they treat the cryptos as an asset and not a security. See the similarity between Singapore and Switzerland. So both of them have the same stand about cryptos. And then you have United Kingdom, which treats it as a private currency. So even though the government there is trying to produce an alternative currency, which is the digital equivalent of a pound and so on, not many inventors have ventured into the British lands because the FCA there is very strong, and unless you have the wherewithal of getting the regulatory licenses, approvals, and so on, the crypto folks are tending to find the other jurisdictions friendlier. And then you have Russia. Russia is again, something you never understand. Putin is inscrutable, really, in all terms of the definition. So there you consider cryptos as financial instruments, not currency. And suddenly Putin woke up to the potential of blockchain and Bitcoin, and he's formed some partnerships and stuff. And there are some successful innovators like Waves platform, and Waves has been really aggressive in quoting the new ICOs. They want to bring the new ICOs into their fold. They're quoting the inventors with pre-ICO investments. And in fact, in Dubai, someone was aggressively chasing me for a platform where they brought the investors and the ICOs together, and they were chasing me to not only speak and present at that event, but they're saying, "Oh, we are interested in your in investing in you, so we want your materials and so on." Okay. Okay. So this is the executive summary about ICOs. I think the presentation is starting here. So it's a new funding mechanism which has been slowly coming to mainstream awareness that leverages the power of decentralized technology. Over $2 billion have been raised, and these offerings are akin to sale of a future money supply or a platform utility enabler rather than a sale of securities. So again, one more key distinction I want to make to you, which is, what is a token? So a token, so mostly when you try to get some new investors on board or new token subscribers on board, they're unable to get the understanding of how it is different from a security. So they say, okay, if I hold these many tokens, I hold this much percentage of your company, isn't it? So how many tokens are you going to issue? Wrong. You are not going to hold any percentage of any company, not shares, not dividends, not anything else, not revenues, nothing else. So what is a token? So imagine me as a company. Okay, so I'm in fact a company which is Himalaya Labs, and we are going to produce a new technology platform called DGCAM, Decentralized Global Capital Markets Platform, which is a technology which is based on blockchain, and it is going to operate in the capital markets area. So I am building a technology. Now I'm giving you a real example of how a token works. So if I issue tokens, and if I have all of you subscribe to my tokens, you don't get any share in the company, but you hold these tokens. And why are these tokens useful to you? So whenever I launch my platform, which is DGCAM, which is a technology, so whenever the technology is ready and I launch the platform, you as token holders will be able to access that platform and use that platform, which is just similar to a Windows license. Okay. So let's say I'm going to create a Windows 3, okay, or a DGCAM, it's the same. And I sell you the right to use this Windows 3, which is the license to Windows 3 beforehand, and you actually give me money, you give me US dollars, or you give me Bitcoins, or you give me Ether to help me build that Windows 3 or DGCAM. And you've already given me the money, and I give you the tokens. And those tokens give you the right to use my platform as and when it is ready, when it is launched. Okay? So you don't get a share in the company, you don't get dividends in the company in the future, you don't get any rights to whatever belongs to the company. You only have the tokens which you can hold in your hand. You can give those tokens to somebody else. You can use those tokens yourself. or you can keep those tokens and simply wait for the tokens to appreciate in price. Is that clear? Okay. So that's the key distinction between a token and anything else. So basically, you are getting a right to a future supply of currency or a utility token, which means you can use the platform when it is launched. So they must be offered on a distributed ledger and are fully digital, with most tokens designed and sold using the protocols of public smart contract technology called Ethereum. So because initial coin offerings and tokens are very popular, can anybody issue any tokens? So can I issue a token called Arifa coin and give you? Of course I can, but it has to be on a blockchain. So I can't just print Arifa coin on a paper or on gold or something and distribute to you and say that, okay, you hold this Arifa coin and you pay me some money, and this Arifa coin is going to appreciate in price. Well, you can do that, but it's not a blockchain token. It's not the initial coin offering. Okay, so it's most likely a scam. Why? Because whatever tokens you issue have to be connected to the distributed ledger technology. It has to be secured cryptographically, and it has to be linked to a blockchain platform. For example, Ethereum. So most tokens, including the very successful ones which raised $200 million each, they have all raised their initial coin offerings on the Ethereum platform on one token, which follows the ERC20 standard, which is a protocol that Ethereum has developed for issuing tokens. So it has to be connected to a distributed ledger technology. It has to be on the blockchain. Otherwise, it's not a token what we are talking about. It is something else. How do you switch the lines? Doesn't seem to have. Let's move.
No pointer or anything. If you need pointers.
Oh, so you are going to move this slides. All right. Then I don't need this. Okay. The crypto economy is growing outside of traditional venues, and this has happened before with video game gold, but not on such a global scale. So traditionally, you saw the successes arising from Silicon Valley, for example, or global hubs. But the crypto successes are arising out of nowhere. They are coming from Taiwan, they are coming from Africa, they are coming from Eastern Europe, places like Ukraine, Kyiv, of course, Korea, of course, China, and possibly in the future in India. So these are non-traditional places. Why? This is the power of decentralization, which means you take away all the barriers between an inventor and the sources of capital or whatever are the factors that are required for the success of an inventor. So the moment you take away these barriers, then it becomes easy for any talented inventor anywhere to not only access the capital, but also access the market. Because the users and the community are who is going to make the crypto economy successful. So as I said, you can create a token, but the token has no value unless there is a big user community embracing that coin and believing in its value and actually giving it value. Because intrinsically it has no value. The value comes from the perception of millions of people saying that this particular coin has value. That is how Ethereum has become successful. That is how Bitcoin has become successful. And that is how all the future successful ICOs or tokens are going to become successful. Okay, now we come to the introduction of initial coin offerings. Okay, what do you need to do an ICO? There are a few things. So as I said before, it combines the power of crowdfunding with the virality of internet marketing. And somebody told me recently when I was at an event Yeah, it was in Zug in Switzerland. So we were in Zug. In fact, David was there as well with Sweetbridge, and we gave talks in the Crypto Valley Forum in Zug. And someone was saying, who was not from the blockchain community, who was just entering this community, he was saying, in blockchain community, you write anything on a napkin in a restaurant, and people want to read it. You give it to a blockchain person, and he consumes it avidly, and he wants to read it. It's not the same with the other industry. So therefore, anything you produce, any white paper you produce, any blog you write, or any forum you make your points on in Reddit and Bitcoin Talk and so on, everything is read and consumed. It's analyzed to death. It is commented on, whether it is appreciative or derogatory or so on. It is mass consumed. So attention is something that we are not starving for in the blockchain world. So the moment you have a valuable something to offer in the blockchain world, people are seeing it. So if you're being ignored even after that, it means you're lacking something in your product. But if your product is good, there's millions of people seeing it, and therefore you will not be starving for attention. And because we have this attention, the viral marketing of social media is more effective than the billions of dollars of marketing budget that the incumbents are throwing at PR agencies, at advertising companies, and so on, right? So you have people actually hungry for blockchain content, and you give them some blockchain content and you spread it in social marketing. It's getting out to all the user community of blockchains, all the potential ICO users. So you don't need the millions of dollars of marketing budgets that traditionally the big companies have needed, which is why the ICOs are very successful, because we have found a hack, a shortcut to reach the mind, to penetrate the minds of the blockchain technologists with very minimal effort, very minimal resources. All it requires is an invention and technological talent. Questions later, please, because I have a lot of slides to get to. Okay. So where is the token value coming from? Anyone wants to give me a guess? Sorry? Yeah. Yeah, but questions from me or no? Yeah. Anyone wants to take a guess on where the token value is derived from? Yes?
Expectations.
Yes? Yes?
I think it is derived by the need of the blockchain developing company to develop the entire platform. If I'm going to, I need to invest $10 million into developing this solution, then I'll price my tokens accordingly. So I get us $10 million and develop the solution and put it.
But yeah, most tokens are not pricing, are not doing differential pricing.
Okay.
Most tokens are being offered at the same price, which is decided arbitrarily, just as nominal value. This is, 1,000 tokens equals 1 ether, or 10,000 tokens equals 1 ether. It has nothing to do with the intrinsic price, because the intrinsic price is going to be developed later by the users. But when you're offering the tokens, it has no correlation with the intrinsic value. It only has the unit. It only has a unit value. So the token value is derived from two factors. One is the functional value, which may be associated with the quality of the technology, how big a market you're going after, what is the disruptive potential, and so on, which is all functional value. And two is the speculative value. Speculative value is, how many people are interested in crypto economy, how many are able to access the coins today, and if they all come on board tomorrow, what is going to be the ultimate price, and so on. These are speculators who have nothing to do with the technology, but they just want to benefit from the mania, the crypto mania of this huge hike in asset appreciation across all categories. So the functional value and the speculative value. In fact, a lot of serious academic researchers have written thesis papers analyzing the speculative value and the functional value of Bitcoin, because Bitcoin obviously is the most prominent and the most useful and the most valuable cryptocurrency. So most research has been focused there. And they've gone into details. They have analyzed some, 20, 30 factors, and they have compared it with fiat currencies, and they have said why Bitcoin can or cannot replace the fiat currencies. What is it lacking? What does it have which is better than fiat currencies and so on. So you have two factors, and the one conclusion I'll share with you from those academic research papers is that they've concluded the Bitcoin speculative value is far more than any other factors. So let's say they derived some 5 important factors, the factors that contribute to the price of Bitcoin. Out of these 5 factors, for example, they concluded that the speculative value of Bitcoin far outweighs the other attractive factors, which is attractiveness of Bitcoin, which is privacy and anonymity, any other factor that you can say, or the network effects and so on. So they say the speculative value far exceeds the other factors, and therefore, because it is speculative in nature, it cannot replace the fiat currency. This is one of the conclusions that one of the researchers has written in the paper about. But you can have your own research into your own cryptocurrency, if you ever create one, and say, okay, these are the factors that contribute value to my cryptocurrency, and this is how it compares with the fiat currency, this is how it compares with Bitcoin, with Ethereum, or any other token. Because each cryptocurrency is unique. It can have a different philosophy as a currency, and it can have different functions and features to all other tokens. So each cryptocurrency is unique. So you can have your own inflation model. You can have your own dynamic supply model saying, okay, I will issue so many tokens in this year and so many in this decade and so on, and then finally it stops. You can have all sorts of things. So basically you need to study macroeconomics, you need to study supply demand, fiscal deficit, inflation. You need to study all so this is your opportunity to become an economist when you create your cryptocurrency. So we've already dealt with this. Next. Okay. So this is an important, very profound slide. I've already shown you the supply-demand graph to derive a price of any good earlier. And I showed you that the price is being artificially fixed for the cryptocurrencies, because at initial coin offering, you have to announce a price just like an IPO, which is artificially fixed, which is not necessarily the same as the equilibrium clearing price. So as long as the artificially fixed price in the beginning is less than the equilibrium clearing price, there will be a bull run in that particular cryptocurrency. So that concept you've understood, right? So now I want to introduce to you another profound concept. So this is an extension of the other concepts you have seen, and this is a recent phenomenon. So I want to talk to you about the platform business model and the network effects associated with the platform business model. So do you understand what is a platform? Can you give me some examples? What are some platforms with network effects? Do you understand what it is? Anyone? David?
Amazon.
Okay.
Facebook.
Okay.
Google.
Okay. So Amazon, Facebook, Google, these are all platforms, and these all also have network effects. Do you understand now what a platform is? No. Okay. Anyone who doesn't understand what a platform is? Okay. You haven't understood.
I have a question. What about Twitter?
Yeah, same thing.
Okay.
Twitter is also a platform. Okay. So a platform is basically a layer where millions and billions of people can come and operate. Okay, so that's a platform. So some platforms are two-sided, where you have content creators and you have content consumers, and most times you can have the same people play on both sides. The content creators can be content consumers. For example, Twitter. You are the ones who tweet, and so you provide content to the platform, but you are also the consumers of that content because you also read tweets. Same thing with Facebook. Sorry? eBay is the same. So eBay is a platform which is a two-sided platform or a two-sided marketplace where you have buyers on one side and sellers on the other side. They interact with each other, and they can also switch roles, but it is a two-sided platform. So there's a distinction between a buyer and a seller on the eBay, even though they might switch. Whereas in Twitter, a content creator and a content consumer is the same. There's not much distinction. So there can be different kinds of platforms. So I have some slides on the platform. But the main idea I want to introduce to you about the platforms is that these platforms have network effects. And this is new as far as the digital economy is concerned. This is an evolution in the internet economy. Okay, so internet started in the 1990s, or at least became mainstream in the 1990s, even though technically it was invented much before. And we have had several stacks of internet development. We had internet of e-commerce, internet of discovery, we had internet of e-commerce, internet of value, internet of search, internet of things, and so on. So we have progressed through several stacks of technology to come to the current level. So currently we are at the platform technologies level. So these are a very big thing. And one of the first very major successful examples of platform economies was Uber. Okay, so before Uber, not many of us understood the real disruptive potential of a platform. So Uber was the first one to actually very lucidly bring to light the effects of a platform economy. And what is so distinct about Uber? So actually there were a lot of traditional VC investors who were putting lots of money in Uber, and there were university academicians. So one of the famous finance professors, his name is Ashwath Damodaran, he wrote a lot of finance books, and he is the proponent of DCF valuation model and so on. And he disagreed with the Uber valuation, saying, oh, these VCs are crazy and they have overvalued Uber by X times. Okay, so Ashwath Damodaran famously took on the VCs and he challenged them, saying your valuation multiples are excessive and you have valued it by X number of times over what it should be. And to prove his point, he actually made his DCF valuation, he made the cash flows and said, Uber's value should be $5.6 billion and you are valuing it at 26 billion or so. And this was, I'm talking about several years ago, because Uber's valuation is no longer $5.6 billion. Okay, so Ashwath Damodaran made this claim, and one of the VC investors who had valued Uber at that point at $26 billion or 30 or whatever, he came back and he countered Dr. Damodaran, saying you have undervalued with your DCF valuation model, because your model, as does any other traditional valuation model, does not take into account the features of a network effect, or it does not take into account how you value a platform economy. And this is a platform economy with a network effect, and no existing models can account for this new phenomena. Okay, and what is this new phenomena? The new phenomena is this. So in the mass market, so this is any other thing you saw before the platform economies and network effects. What you saw in the previous world, let's say Kodak world. Give me some examples, David, of the old world, old economy.
What do you mean like shared capital or?
Anything, like, before we had the Facebooks and Googles and Ubers and so on, like any traditional old economy. Any manufacturing company, a pharmaceutical company, or anything that manufactured vacuum cleaners or refrigerators, any company you took, okay? So their marginal cost would come down with increase in production, and the value would be same. The value of the product would be same. The marginal cost would come down. So companies which have excessive capacity of production will benefit, because the company with the most capacity of production would have the least marginal cost. So the cumulative cost of production would be least for companies with the highest capacity. So some of the pioneering companies like Reliance, for example, this was their magic formula. So let's say Reliance is an Indian company, by the way, and one of the richest companies in India. Even though the wealth is split between two brothers, still each of the brothers is richer than almost every other company, or at least the bigger brother is. So the magic formula then how Dhirubhai Ambani created wealth for Reliance was, let's say Reliance was an Indian company and Indian demand was X metric tons of polyester or fabric or whatever they were producing. So Dhirubhai Ambani was visionary and he realized that he has to set up a manufacturing capacity far in excess of the Indian capacity. Then normal people would say, if you create supply far in excess of what is needed in your country, then prices will obviously drop and you are the loser, right? That's the traditional thinking. But Dhirubhai did not think so because he was a visionary. He saw several steps ahead. He was wanting to get at the cost point which was way down the curve, which is somewhere here, where no other manufacturer in the world would compete with him. And how would he arrive at this point? Only when he increases his supply or manufacturing capacity so high that he is going beyond the demand of his native geography. So he created a company with capacity somewhere here. Of course, he did not have the money. It's not like a rich man wanting to throw money at improving his production capacity. Of course, he raised money in the public markets and he got the money and he created this capacity. And at that time, when he created his capacity was here, no other company in the world could compete with him in the cost of production. At which point, then all his products were everywhere because he had the lowest cost of production. So he had the power, he had the pricing power to price his products at whatever, and it was the most competitive compared to anyone else. So he was the visionary because he saw this, okay, and he understood this stuff. Now, what is different from that manufacturing economy to this platform economy? So if you want to understand further, I even wrote an article called Network Effects in the Cryptoverse. It's in Medium, and if you Google it, you will find it. And I explained that more elaborately in that article. And now, here the distinction between the manufacturing economy and the platform economy. The costs still fall, but the value exponentially rises. Okay, so the value of the manufacturing economy stayed the same. Let's say the value of a meter of cloth. Okay, that's the good that Dhirubhai Ambani was producing. It stays constant whether you produce 1 million meters of cloth or 1 billion meters of cloth. The value of a meter of cloth is the same. Whereas here, what you produce, the value of what you produce goes up exponentially. For example, Twitter. Okay, so I myself was a big skeptic of Twitter, and I never liked it. And I said, okay, how is it going to be successful? It's 140 characters. I like to write a long, lengthy paragraph about my status and write a story on Facebook and so on. Why is it going to be successful? Then suddenly, after a few years, I saw people are using 140 characters in such an innovative way that they're linking articles. So the article now can be any length you want. It can be a white paper, it can be 1,000-page document, it can be a picture, whatever it is, and 140 characters is all you need. So that was an invention that came about with this platform. And as more people started using Twitter, you can almost do away with Facebook, because everybody who was on Facebook, or actually a better demographic, is on Twitter. So you don't get the network effects of a platform unless you have the critical mass, which is the threshold mass for any platform to become successful. The moment you have it, the value starts rising exponentially, and that's when the platform effects kick in. So if Uber was just a successful cab hiring company which offered you cheaper rides than the rest, it would not be so successful. Uber is successful because it is so much better that everybody is using Uber. All the idle capacity of cabs are on Uber, therefore the supply is huge, and because the supply is huge, you have the pricing advantage, and no one takes more than 3 minutes or 5 minutes or 10 minutes to get to your location, no matter which remote corner of the earth you are in. And because you have that access and because you have the pricing advantage, you as a user of the cab ride, you want to get on Uber, and because everybody is on there, others are not able to compete. Yes, there are of course successful competitors, but they are regional, like for Lyft, for example, or Nehru Cab or something else cab in India. They're all successful, but they're not able to take on this global platform because this global platform is almost a monopoly. So extending this concept of a platform economy with network effects, There is only one natural monopoly possible in any platform. So if you take social media, Facebook is a natural monopoly. There cannot exist another successful platform as successful as Facebook. It cannot be an oligopoly. It can be only a monopoly. Similarly, Twitter. Only Twitter can be successful unless something better comes along and overtakes Twitter with more users and better features and so on. Twitter is the king and Twitter is the monopoly. Ethereum. Ethereum is currently the only smart contract functionality blockchain protocol. Unless something comes which is completely superior, which takes away all the millions of developers and the user community on Ethereum, Ethereum is king. Okay, so this is what explains the network effects of a platform economy. The moment you have network effects, you're the king and you're on your way to become a monopoly. No one can dethrone you unless they have all the superior features, or by some magic they get all your users on board, which is the users in the entire world. So usually, typically, the successful natural monopolies platforms, they have attracted every single potential user onto their platform. Now, people who are unaware and illiterate about Facebook, if they get to know about such a platform existing, or they get to know about Facebook, they come onto Facebook. They don't go looking for a new platform, even though it might be in their regional language and stuff. They want to come on Facebook. Why? Because everybody is on Facebook. If you have lost a friend, you met a friend 30 years ago and you never saw her again, the only way to find is on Facebook because everybody is there. If you go to a platform with only million people or 5 million people, there is no chance of finding everybody who got lost. So that's the secret of a successful monopoly, which is a platform economy with network effects. Okay. Slow forward. Okay. These are some of the examples. I'm going to end shortly. What is the time, David? Oh, okay, so we need to break for lunch. So let's break it here. So I was going to show you some examples of platforms and networks after the slide we break. So you see all these are platforms. Airbnb is a platform, Uber is a platform, Amazon, eBay, Etsy, PayPal, Google Wallet, Square, CircleUp, Prosper, Lending Club. These are all different kinds of platforms. These are investment platforms. And then you have social networking platforms, Facebook, LinkedIn, Nextdoor, Tinder. Then you have communication platforms, Skype, WhatsApp, WeChat, and so on. And on this side, you have whether it is closed or controlled or open or what sort of a platform it is. So if you want to succeed in any industry and any market, you ought to be going for a platform. Yes, of course, you can succeed as a product also, but it will not be the kind of blinding success that you see with Bitcoin or with Ethereum. Not only do they have early entrant, first mover advantage, but they have the advantage of the network effects of bringing on everybody that is interested in what they have to offer, and that is everybody. So it will be very difficult for someone to dethrone the current kings and natural monopolies of platforms unless they offer drastically superior. Even if they offer drastically superior stuff, people have a lot of resistance to move from what they're using, so it could take decades. It could take a lot of resources, effort, time, everything. Okay, so on that note, we end and we continue after lunch. So let's come back in an hour's time. Thank you. Okay, so we all go down. I think the lunch is served in the ground floor. We get back here at 2. Okay. Great.
Turn it on?
Were you even looking at it?
No.
I asked you to sit there and see because